Welcome to the Real Buffs. I am your host, Charlie.
I'm Matt, and unlike Francis, I did not get my name off a dish soap bottle.
What's my name?
Say my name, Francis.
Are we just going Destiny's Child now?
We are. Don't go chasing waterfalls, folks.
Well, that's TLC. Okay.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I was thinking.
Are we just moving on to?
We're just moving on. Well, this week's movie is none other than Deadpool.
The one, the only. Obviously directed by Tim Miller, written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, starring Ryan Reynolds, Marina Baccarin, Ed Skrein, TJ Miller, Gina Carano, Brianna Hildebrand. So awesome movie. Obviously, reason why we're doing this is because we've got the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie that just came out last week. And Matt and I have both seen it. So we've got a spoiler-free review at the end of it. So Stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's why we're doing it. And I don't know about you, Matt, but I had a lot of fun revisiting this movie.
Before I even decided to watch this movie, I actually was watching it last weekend when I got back from my trip. And I was like, I want to put, I've seen Deadpool 2 now twice, and Deadpool and Wolverine twice. And so I was like, I'm going to throw this movie on just to revisit because I didn't do it before going to see the film. And it is so much fun. Like, thank God Ryan Reynolds or whomever leaked that test footage did so, because honestly, man, I was not a Deadpool fan until Ryan Reynolds took the reins. My interactions with Deadpool were the annoying cosplayers at Comic-Cons that would all dress up like Deadpool and do annoying stuff all throughout these Comic-Cons, and I hated it. They're everybody's like least favorite cosplayers, but now that we actually have the movies, man, I really like the character. I've grown to really adore the character, and what Ryan Reynolds has done is absolutely amazing in the Fox universe and now the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. Newly into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as of this year. This was the Deadpool Wolverine version. Obviously, the new one that just came out is the first Disney one, and it was good to see that they kind of just let him have free reign still.
Yeah, unless it's cocaine, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, no cocaine. Feige doesn't approve of that. So, all right. So let's dive into the ChatGPT summary. Deadpool is a 2016 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character of the same name, directed by Tim Miller and starring Ryan Reynolds as the titular character. The film is notable for its irreverent humor, fourth wall breaking, and R-rated content. First of its kind, obviously, for the comic book genre, unless we're going to count Blade, and that
Blade did save the Marvel universe originally. So, I mean,
yes.
we got to count Blade in some regard. Blade saved the MCU from bankruptcy and everything, like way back in the 90s. And we wouldn't have any of these movies potentially without Blade. So there's only ever going to be one Blade. We
all owe a lot to Wesley Snipes. So
we do. We could have all paid his taxes for him, and then he could have avoided jail time. But, such is life.
That's what Marvel should have done. That was the right thing to do at the time. It would have been. But, I digress. Anyways, the film opens with Deadpool, Wade Wilson, attacking a convoy through a series of flashbacks. The audience learns about Wade's past. Wade Wilson is a former Special Forces operative turned mercenary who meets and falls in love with Vanessa Carlyle. Their happiness is shattered when Wade is diagnosed with terminal cancer. In desperation, Wade is approached by a recruiter for a secret program that promises to cure his cancer and give him superhuman abilities. Wade agrees and is subjected to torturous experiments by Ajax and Angel Dust. The experiments activate a latent mutant gene, giving Wade accelerated healing powers, but leaving him severely disfigured. Adopting the alias Deadpool, Wade sets out to hunt down Ajax, who he believes can fix his disfigurement. Along the way, Deadpool teams up with two X-Men members, Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, who try to recruit him to the X-Men. The film culminates in a showdown at a decommissioned aircraft carrier where Deadpool, with the help of Colossus and Negasonic, fight Ajax and his henchmen. Deadpool defeats Ajax, but chooses not to kill him until he admits that he has no cure for Wade's condition. Despite this, Deadpool reconciles with Vanessa, who accepts him despite his disfigurement. She accepts that his face is one that she can sit on. So, and isn't that at the end what we all hope for?
Listen, first and foremost, it wasn't just an aircraft carrier. That wasn't a helicarrier from the Avengers. Just want to throw that out there. That was a helicarrier, believe it or not.
I was wondering that. I was thinking, I'm like, is this the helicarrier? I didn't know if they were gonna. Okay, it is.
It is, yes. So they had little hints of the MCU there, but you know what? We all do strive to have a face that somebody would sit on, and he looks like a shriveled testicle, but love is more than skin deep, my friends, especially on International Women's Day.
Oh, is today International Women's Day?
It could be any day. Could be International Women's Day. I don't know.
Every day should be International Women's Day. Okay,
it should. You know what? Especially when the women out there dominating the Olympics, they could, let the women dominate you in your life as well. I
have no problem with that whatsoever.
At all.
Yes, hashtag sub over here. So Matt, obviously, tell me where you were when you first saw this film. What's your relationship with this film? It sounds like you got a little bit of a history with it. So tell me about it.
Yeah, dude, I saw it opening night in a movie theater down in Florida when I was still living there. Of course, we a few of us went. We saw the movie. We saw it opening night. Of course, I was hyped, because it's like, oh shit, Deadpool, man! Like this is something that we've been waiting on since the test footage leaked, and it's Ryan Reynolds, so it's going to be good. I've always been like a big comic book fan, comic book reader. I've always kind of like, oh, I know Deadpool. He's the merc with the mouth. I just told you my Comic-Con experiences. I never really loved the characters from comics. I've never really been a big X-Men reader, period. But what he's done with this, it's really endeared itself to me. And it's one of the few trilogies and continuously gets better, and this movie was awesome. I was blown away. I didn't know what to expect as far as how they would handle his powers, how raunchy they would really get with this film. And man, on all fronts, I was very blown away. I loved the opening sequence with, the slow motion, how he's got the cigarette lighter in the guy's mouth and he's killing everybody. And he's got the bullets he's counting for Francis and he's trying to find Francis. Dude, this movie rocks.
Dude. And the opening credits too, like they first off, like they've got the amazing, song playing, which is Angel of the Morning in the opening credits. So first, it just kicks off with an amazing banger, and then it's just going through everybody, like some hacks film, like the writers are the true heroes of the story and everything. And I appreciated the humor right off the bat. And I was like, okay, this is what this film is going to be. So you were there opening night. I was there opening weekend. I believe it opened. It did open the 12th in February 12th in 2016. I was there. I think that Monday. I want to say that Monday was President's Day, and I went with my brother. So I was there opening.
It came out on Valentine's Day, actually. Yeah, it did come out on Valentine's Day. That's right.
Yeah, it was pitched as obviously like the love story and everything like that. That was part of it. And
yes,
at the end he says is like, this is a love story or whatever. Well, he says a few times, he's like, this is a horror story, a love story. So whatever. He just kind of goes and does his Deadpool thing. But anyways, I did see it that weekend with my brother and his then girlfriend, and I had a great time watching it. I thought it was hilarious. And I was like, man, this is something different. This is really funny. And at that point, like, I'm not as into the comics as you are. Not that you were into Deadpool, but like even just comics in general. Like I just have like a general awareness of what's going on in certain things, but I wouldn't say I'm a reader of them. So I just knew of the character, and I'll be honest, I knew of the character because of my introduction to it in obviously X-Men Wolverine Origins, right?
God.
It was Origins, right?
It was the Wolverine Origins movie. It was, yes.
Yeah. And where they made the brilliant choice of taking this character, messing with his design a little bit too, and absolutely pasting his mouth shut so he couldn't talk. And that's a choice right there.
I think they did that on purpose. I think so if I'm remembering correctly, I know we might be getting ahead, maybe it's in the production notes, but he agreed to do that because there was like something where he agreed to do that so he can get his own Deadpool film later on or something. There was like some sort of deal that he was working out because he was like, this isn't Deadpool. Deadpool's been like his dream character to play. And he agreed to do that if he got something, there was something I can't fully remember, but obviously like that's not the case, and so that's why obviously they didn't want to make the movie. He leaked it, but there was some reason specifically why he did that. I'll have to look into that.
I mean, maybe I didn't find it in my production notes. And by the way, FYI, so when we go into production notes, I usually have something to go off of. Like I usually buy the Blu-ray or something, and I'll have something that goes into a little bit more of the production history behind it, or an article about it. I didn't have much of that this time, so we're getting it from Wikipedia, which as we all know is the best place to get any sort of information. Because as Michael Scott says, anybody in the world could write on there, so you're getting the best possible information on there. So, yeah. So I digress. Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but Wikipedia is where I got my production notes from. Yeah, I bet they did something like that, but honestly, what would have mattered if they had him with his mouth shut or not? You know what I mean? Like, right. What would it have mattered in that movie? Not that we're trying to do an X-Men Wolverine origins.
Yeah, I just think the big thing was like there was studio interference was the big thing, if I remember. But I'll have to try to find it because I just remember hearing that at some point, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. I'm not totally sure. But yeah, like, anyways, moving on.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's true. So. But yeah, much like you, I love this movie. I was kind of like semi excited to go see it, and then when I saw it, I was like thrilled. I'm like, oh man, this was so much fun. It was so much different. I wish they did more of these R-rated superhero films. And yeah, I was like, this is great. Obviously, the only other R-rated one I've seen besides Blade was the DC one, Watchmen, which I think is like the other one that kind of calls for it, to be an R-rated film. Other ones you don't necessarily have to, like. But,
right, yeah. Watchmen was still a really good, I think, underrated DC film too. Zack Snyder, for all the kind of the hate he gets, but that was a good movie as well. But rated R is very new to the comic book world. It was at least in 2016.
Yeah, and it's still relatively rare. Like right now, it's still like a little rare, unless you're talking about like a television adaptation or something like that with Netflix, where it's not necessarily rated R, but it's just it's not limited to be like, I don't know what they call it, TV 14 or something like that, whatever they call it nowadays. That's how old we are. Remember those back in the day where it's like
God,
TV 14, TVMA? Yeah, that's what I was getting at. But anyways, so
the reason why I found the reason was essentially. Okay. Back, it was 2017. It was during the writer's strike. Ryan Reynolds was already attached to Deadpool to be playing it at some point, and the studio was like, we want you to be in this movie. He was like, I don't really want to because this isn't the version of the character. And they're like, well, basically you need to play this or you're not going to ever play Deadpool, period. And so he kind of got coerced in a way to playing this version of Deadpool that is very, very not. Then he was pissed. He was very frustrating. And he said that he was already attached to the Deadpool movie. They hadn't written the script yet. There was no writers attached. And essentially he had to ad lib everything. And so they ended up sewing his mouth shut because he was like, fine, I guess I'll do it. But this isn't the right Deadpool. And so they ended up like sewing his mouth shut and like doing all this stuff to the character, essentially, is what happened.
Okay. So that's good to know. I mean, I like in this one that they have the little action figure too of like.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, it's perfect. It's just
in the post credits, he goes and like actually kills himself in Wolverine. From like the filming of that movie. When then he goes in, or no, that's the end of the second one. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's when he gets Cable's time thing. Yes.
Yeah, I knew what you were talking about. Yeah, that's the second one. But anyways. Here we are almost 10 years later. Like, I think I want to say like 8 years at this point.
Yeah.
Has this movie aged well though? Like I that was sort of like the one question. I'm like, has this aged well? What do you think?
I think it has. I mean, revisiting the movie as recent as last weekend, I would say there was nothing joke wise that I was like, oh God, maybe we shouldn't say that. Everything was, well within what Deadpool would say, the character, the fourth wall break. There was nothing in there that I was like, oh, that's probably the only thing that hasn't aged well, obviously, is TJ Miller. But aside from that, I mean, I would say the movie has actually held up, 8 years on, and is just as good as it was when it first came out.
Yeah, my concern watching it now, and the reason why I asked this question is because I want to take us back to a time in the 1990s where meta humor and this meta style of cinema was so prevalent in our films, and especially in horror films. Like, go back to Scream. Scream is like really kind of what changed it and gave birth to this sort of like teen meta, like this way of talking through films that you see. It carries over into Scream 2, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, and it's one of those things that I'm like, did this age well because Deadpool was such a hit? Did it change how we're doing this meta commentary and sort of date itself because we're oversaturated by it? I don't think it has, though. And honestly, like, it's a breath of fresh air that it hasn't, because it's so different for its genre. It's not Scream, and we're an R-rated horror film, which every horror film is R-rated now. So it's like having that fourth wall breaking, crass humor is not prevalent in all of our comic book films that we're inundated with, and we are inundated with them. So it's like a breath of fresh air that it's not that. And even though we've had more of these now, we're on the third one, it still hits because it's still funny. It doesn't, I don't look back on it and be like, oh man, like they're doing this too much, they're kind of ruining it. No, they're not. They're improving upon it. They're doing it better. And I think it's aged beautifully. I went back and watched it, and I was like, yeah, I still like this. It still hits with me, and it's not gotten old. So I'm so thrilled that it hasn't. I just hope that, let's see what Disney does now. If they are like, oh man, we gotta do more of this,
I think they did a very good line. Like, I think as long as Ryan Reynolds is playing the character, they're going to let him do his own thing, and they're going to trust him with it, as they should. Because it was, the fourth wall breaks weren't done in like a eye rolling kind of like just to do it way. Like, everything kind of made sense in terms of the plot or the scene that was going on. And if any, they didn't just do it as like service. It wasn't like a fan service fourth wall break. It was very well within the character, and you understood like why he's doing it or what he's saying or X, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't just one of those like, oh, he's doing it just to do it, as most studios probably would have done if they had really gotten their hands on it. It was just like, Ryan Reynolds truly understands his character. And so the way he wrote it, the way that they all came together and wrote it was very, very clever, and it still holds up.
And to my understanding is that actually goes back to the comics, is because his character is very much like this in the comics as well. Like, his character
knows he's in a comic book, and his character is exactly like this in the comics as well. So and obviously this is a film, so his character knows he's in a film, and that's where we're going with this. And that's where I was like, yeah, it's within the character. And it kind of leads to my next question about like, how do we feel about voiceover? Because in general, I'm not the biggest guy as far as voiceover goes in film, but I think because this character knows and there's that meta commentary to it, I think it works perfectly. I think this is the one time where I'm like, oh man, the voiceover works. Like, another one that we did earlier, early days of the pod was The Wolf of Wall Street, where I think it works a little well too. Yeah, and it's similar. It's funny. Like, it's a funny story. It's a comedy for the most part, and similar to this one, like it's a comedy. It's keeping in line with the comics, and it does fit in well. Because I was a little concerned. I'm like, oh, I wonder like how I'm going to feel about the voiceover. I'm like, no, it works perfectly, and it holds up very well. It does. And, even with the voiceover, it moves the plot forward, and it fills in certain things that you need to know without having to waste extra runtime going on a flashback or something. And all the while, like, it's telling you things. It's a plot device that actually works really well. And again, it's not annoying. It's not like something that's just, oh God, they're explaining the movie rather than showing us, because they do a really good job of showing and telling, I think, with the voiceover.
Yeah. Yeah. And, they do flashbacks. Obviously, if the whole beginning scene is like, you're thrust into it and then it kind of goes into a flashback, but they're doing it through this voiceover storytelling style that like it works and it's within the character because he knows he's in a film. It's like, it works. It finds a way to work. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So that's how I feel about it. And it's not one of those like you start in the middle. And this is another thing I typically don't like is like when we start in the middle of something and kind of go back. Sometimes I'm like, that's a little hit or miss. Like I usually am like, okay, let's go to that. Then I'm actually thinking about it now. I'm like, oh shit, some of my favorite movies of all time kind of do that. I'm like, Goodfellas does that.
Yeah.
Wolf of Wall Street does it. Two of my favorites right there.
Stand By Me is another one that does it very well. Is you're right, and I mean also like The Sandlot. Like there are a lot of movies that are good out there that kind of do this. That,
yeah,
and then in the moment you're like, I can't think, but then you start thinking as you're talking about one film, it's like, oh shit, that's right, and then they kind of come. So it's a lot of hit or miss, but I think we've had some really good ones out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that, like the way they do this one and the way how it fits in, like I said, with the character and with the comics, it just makes sense. So, I feel like it's one of those things where it hits well and it's not something that is a normal criticism for me or takes away from it, from my overall experience.
Agreed.
But I got to ask, man, we're watching this movie. I was laughing my ass off again. This has got to be the funniest Marvel movie, right?
I mean, I think, well, I mean, if we want to split hairs, before somebody like jumps into our comments or whatever, being like, it's not Marvel, it's Fox. Yes, number one, it's probably the funniest Fox film, but also I would say that the humor is probably the funniest if you're even putting it now into the MCU as well. Like I think that it very much is. He's the funniest character. I've always loved, like Ant-Man, the Avengers, Iron Man, all of them. I've never been a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan, but like understandably Drax and Peter Quill, like they're pretty funny characters, Mantis, but that humor is vastly different than what we get with Deadpool. And so in my opinion, yeah, I think this might actually be like the funniest superhero movie of all time, if we even want to label that. I think
yeah.
Before talking about that, we're not talking about the third one, Deadpool and Wolverine, which is my favorite of the three. I'll spoil that right now. But if we're just talking about Deadpool, yeah, without a doubt, it's the funniest out of any superhero movie that's really come out.
Yeah, it is, and it doesn't. And I know like when we say Marvel, I didn't mean specifically the MCU. He's still technically a Marvel.
No, I see what you're saying. No,
you know
I know.
What I mean?
There's always that one person out there that's like, I'm actually. It's like, dude, I know what we're talking about here. We were just saying for the sake, like, is this, obviously.
Yeah, it's not MCU. Yeah, but you clarified that. And I would say, yeah, it's up there as far as like funniest even superhero movies from what I like to look at. I mean, Thor Ragnarok, I think, was like really, really funny. I like Guardians of the Galaxy. I think even Iron Man's really funny as well. Like, let's be real.
I mean, Iron Man is funny. Yeah.
When we talk about like comedic timing, like Robert Downey Jr. is perfect as Tony Stark in his comedic timing. So I really have a hard time though, thinking like anything else is as funny as Ryan Reynolds as this character in this movie, and it's not just the fact that it's rated R. It's just like, that's what the character is built on is humor more than anything. And not
it's like
every
that crude and crass humor too.
Yeah. Not every character is built for that. Like they're always entertaining and they can be funny, and there are always funny moments throughout the films, but like, very few of the characters are really built off of that sense of humor. Maybe like we said, Tony Stark, Star-Lord, Ant-Man. Those are some of the ones that I think come to mind when I think of that. And then obviously Thor and Ragnarok, like that's funny, but I mean, this character is built to be funny, and Ryan Reynolds as an actor is built to be funny. So I have a hard time putting anything else ahead of this as far as what I look for in a superhero action comedy rolled into one. So, and for that matter, I got to ask too, because this kind of leads into my next question. And this is sort of a broader question. Is Ryan Reynolds the most perfectly cast actor for his superhero? Because I think he's got a case to be an undoubtedly yes.
You know, I man, if one thing that like the MCU and everybody has always done, I want to say yes. However, there's only been one Wolverine cast ever in our history since 2000, and that's Hugh Jackman. So, I mean, it's really hard to put him above Hugh Jackman as Wolverine but it's hard because Tony Stark and like Captain America, like those four right there are like perfectly cast in my opinion as the people that they play, you know, as Chris Evans plays Captain America, RDJ as Tony Stark, like they are those characters to me. And then Hugh Jackman, I mean, there's only ever been one. I mean, granted, there's only ever been like one Deadpool in live action. But it's hard to put him above Tony Stark maybe, but he's right there. I think Hugh Jackman still takes the cake overall for me, but Ryan Reynolds, he gets it, man. He gets it.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I will say this, like the MCU and Marvel in general, like has done just a great job at casting overall. It's probably one of their strongest suits has been casting. Like there are very few weak links of your main superheroes. They've kind of nailed it as far as that goes. Like I have a harder time coming here and saying, yeah, that doesn't feel right about anyone so far. Maybe a villain or two, but even then I'm like, you know, and I'm leaving out villains, by the way. I'm not saying best cast actor for one, because
no, right.
We would have a whole different discussion.
Marvel has a problem with their villains, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Well, currently they certainly do post Thanos, but and you know, obviously with news coming, we might be having different discussions about that.
Yeah.
You know. But anyways, I just like, yeah, man, Hugh Jackman's the one where Hugh Jackman and Robert Downey Jr. I think are the, you know, 1 and 2 right there as far as like others that I'd consider. But that's not to say that like Chris Evans isn't perfectly cast, or Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Pratt for that matter. All the Chris's are pretty perfectly cast. You know, and I love them in their roles. The fuck, for that matter, Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, perfectly cast.
I mean, honestly, I even love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He might be like my favorite Spider-Man that we've ever had because he plays the duality right there. You know, there's other conversations. Like if we're talking about DC, honestly, I thought Ben Affleck was one of the better Bruce Waynes we've had. I think Robert Pattinson's played a Batman really well, Christian Bale. But if we're talking specifically Marvel, yeah, like they really lean into these characters and they seem like they really get behind the character they're playing. And there's so much love and passion. And I think that really helps because Deadpool's a passion for Ryan Reynolds. Hugh Jackman, you know, he got cast forever and he's always been Wolverine. He's really leaned into the Wolverine, and RDJ started the MCU with Iron Man, and he like you can't distinguish. I mean, obviously you kind of can, but like when you see Robert Downey Jr., like, oh shit, he is Tony Stark when you just like see him in real life at points. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the same can be said about like Ryan Reynolds. I even look at him like back in films, some of his comedy films, like Waiting, even, and I'm like, yeah, he's still Deadpool in that basically.
He's always had the humor. That's one thing. Like he's always had like Van Wilder, Waiting, Just Friends. Like he's always had that humor about him, and so I can always see like, yeah, this is one when we found out he was actually playing. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hey, I can make jokes like that too. The Proposal.
Oh man, what the fuck was that?
Oh man. Anyways, yeah, I do. You know, it's up there. He can be. I'm gonna go and say he's number 2, and the only reason he's number 2 is because of Hugh Jackman, who's been doing the role for almost 30 years, and he's going to be doing it till he's 90. So, and yeah, that's just, I don't know, man. Like that's all I can say though. He's so perfect for this role.
Agreed.
All right, let's dive into the production notes. So, as I mentioned before, prefacing this, I literally, by the way, Matt, I just got like my Blu-ray order. Usually I get them a little earlier, little delay on Amazon.
Oh,
So,
man.
so now I got it in, and I'm gonna have to like reference all these notes. But you know what? I'm gonna trust the people at Wikipedia and say that they're fact checking things, and I'm just hoping that that's possible. But who knows? Here we go. Artisan Entertainment announced a deal with Marvel Entertainment in May of 2000 to co-produce, finance, and distribute several films based on Marvel Comics characters, including Deadpool. By February 2004, though, writer-director David S. Goyer and Ryan Reynolds were working on a Deadpool film at New Line Cinema. Interesting. New Line. They had worked together on the Marvel film Blade Trinity. Reynolds was interested in the part of Deadpool after learning that in the comics, the character refers to his appearance as Ryan Reynolds crossed with Sharpay, which who's Sharpay?
Sharpay, man. Dude, it's Sharpay. It's from High School Musical.
Oh my God. I don't know a High School Musical reference.
At least I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm pretty sure it's Sharpay from High School Musical. That's the only Sharpay I know, but
well, you look that up and you look that up and tell me if that's who it is. But New Line Cinema executive Jeff Katz, who thought Reynolds was the only actor suitable for the role, championed the idea. Yeah, you're clearly right, Mr. Katz. However, there were rights issues with 20th Century Fox for their X-Men films, and the project did not move forward. Shocker, rights issues. By March of 2005, Reynolds had learned that Fox had expressed interest in filming in a film featuring Deadpool. The character was set to make a cameo appearance in the 2009 film X-Men Origins Wolverine, the one that we previously mentioned, with Reynolds, cast in the part. His role was expanded during the film's production. Katz was an executive at Fox at this point and said that Deadpool was nicely set up to be explored in his own way in a future film. I don't know about that, but yeah, kind of, I guess, if you want to say that. The film's portrayal deviates from the original comic, imbuing him with several superpowers and sewing his mouth shut. So Deadpool apparently dies in the film, though I guess the post-credit scene showing him still alive was added to the film shortly before its release. After the successful opening weekend of Wolverine, Fox officially began development on Deadpool, with Reynolds attached to star and X-Men producer Lauren Schuler Donner involved. The spinoff was set to ignore the Wolverine version of Deadpool and return the character to its like roots that we get basically in this one. Yeah, it's kind of it's funny that it says like after the Wolverine's like big opening weekend. I don't know about you, but I remember this movie spectacularly kind of like having almost bombing in a way. And I think it was because it was like
this became the highest grossing R-rated or something like that. Like
no, I'm talking about the Origins one.
Yeah. Oh God, that movie sucks. Yeah.
No, didn't it bomb? Like, wasn't it like it leaked online or something like that, and people were streaming it early or something like that? That was a big part of it too.
There was some leaks, I think. Yeah. There was something like that.
So I'm like, wait, I remember this. Like I distinctly remember that. So anyways, all right. Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick were hired to write the script in January 2010. Reynolds, who worked closely with them, said they were chosen because tonally they got it. They just understood Deadpool right off the bat. By that June, Robert Rodriguez had been asked to direct the film. I'm going to just skip ahead and say that is my one and only interdimensional cable box choice, because I'm not going to have Ryan Reynolds be or not be the character of Deadpool, but to see fucking Robert Rodriguez direct, hell yeah, I'd love to see that. I think that'd be awesome. Talk about a guy who gets humor, gets violence and all this. So yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, anyways, he confirmed this a month later, saying he had been sent a really good script and was considering taking on the project. By October, though, he was no longer interested, and Adam Berg was being looked at to direct the film. In April 2011, though, Tim Miller was hired after working on the visual effects for some X-Men films, in part because of his work creating animated shorts too, as well. So that's where we're at this point. This unfortunately for Reynolds, like this film has like a little bit of a, well, it's got a long delay, almost like 10 years of getting produced and made. So, you know, and he's had some setbacks along the way. So the next setback we're talking about is the Green Lantern superhero film, which he often references to actually in these Deadpool films, which is funny.
Yes.
It's always used for good humor. And it's great because like you just know Ryan Reynolds is the type of guy who just doesn't take himself seriously. So it's good that he can laugh about this. The Green Lantern superhero film was released later in 2011 and was a disappointment. This tainted the Deadpool project, unfortunately. Fox executives were already concerned about the R rating. And after several meetings, the studio agreed the film could not be reconfigured for a more traditional PG-13 rating and gave Miller a low six-figure budget to produce some test footage. He created the test footage using CGI at his animation studio, Blur Studio, in 2012, with Reynolds voicing Deadpool. This footage didn't convince Fox, though, to greenlight the film. So after the successful May release of The Avengers, so we can thank The Avengers for a lot on this one, Reese and Warnick thought Deadpool might be approved as an already developed superhero film. Fox was actually even more doubtful about the script now, however, and began exploring ways to include Deadpool in an Avengers-esque team up, obviously, you know, probably like with the X-Men. But this, I don't know. Again, this is interesting. At different times during development, though, James Cameron and David Fincher, both friends with Miller, read the film script and championed the project to Fox executives. So, yeah, that's kind of cool that they had two big
they didn't
guys
want to make this film at least until the test footage was mysteriously leaked.
Yep. Yeah. So the test footage was leaked online, July 2014, and was met with overwhelmingly enthusiastic response. That September, Fox gave Deadpool a release of February 12th, 2016. Production was set to begin in March of 2015, with Simon Kinberg joining as producer. Reynolds attributed Fox's greenlighting of the film entirely to the leak. So let's just say you can think about who potentially leaked that, who had the most to gain from that leak.
Listen, it's never been proven, but like Ryan, I mean, come on. The heavily believed is Ryan. He'll never obviously say it, but yeah, I firmly believe it was him who actually leaked it. I'm wondering if like they make a joke about it in a Deadpool film eventually. Like they should. They really should. I think it'd be funny. You know, like what are they going to do? You know, like they've made millions of dollars off of it. Yeah,
so,
honestly.
like, it really doesn't matter. So Miller, and the writers had previously discussed leaking the footage themselves and Reynolds initially thought Miller had done so. He later believed the leak came from someone at Fox in exchange for being able to make the film the way they wanted. Fox gave the crew a much smaller budget than is typical for superhero films. And you know, that's fair. And, you know, we can see that as obviously there's only two X-Men in the film. There's that whole scene, like, you know, the scene where he doesn't have his guns or whatever. It's because they didn't have the budget. Like the final fight where he forgets all of his weapons again. That's because they had no more budget to do any like CGI action scenes. So that whole sequence is because like literally they didn't have the budget to put the bag of guns in the film. So they just wrote it that way. That totally makes sense now that I think about it. And it was kind of funny. Like, so I guess they're like, oh, we don't have the budget for the guns, but we've got a budget to film a car crash. We can do that. Yeah, they had to work with what they had. Yeah. Yeah. Like we can do the car crash with the bender. So that's funny though. I didn't think about that, but it totally makes sense. All right. Tim Miller and cinematographer Ken Sang wanted the film to look grittier and less clean and glossy than other superhero films. And it definitely does. So when they were filming, they decided to shoot with digital cameras, but add a film grain in post production. This gave that like images a little bit more texture. So that's it as far as production goes. I didn't want to get into post production and all that stuff. So yeah, box office wise, did very well. 363 million in the domestic box office. Released February 12th, 2016, as we said before. Made 132 million on its opening weekend. Matthew, where does this movie rank in the 2016 rankings?
Man, I know it was like the number one R-rated film to come out. It was like the highest grossing R-rated film of like all time at the opening weekend.
It was the highest rated opening R-rated film, I think, ever. Yes.
Yeah. At least until, this most recent one. But 2016. Oh man, I feel like it's going to be top. I'm trying to think like what came out in 2016. I'm trying to think. Man, that's a good question. What did we get? Oh, you know what came out in 2016? So it was not number one, because that's when Captain America Civil War came out and Batman v Superman came out. Oh God, we also got that really shitty Suicide Squad movie that year. Oh man. And I know we got Rogue One also came out in 2016.
Yeah, that was towards the end of 2016.
Was it? I'm gonna go number 10.
Yeah, that's actually a little lower. It's number 6.
Oh.
Yeah. Right behind The Jungle Book and then Secret Life of Pets. Second highest grossing superhero movie that year, though, only behind Captain America Civil War.
Oh yeah, and Doctor Strange I think came out that year too, maybe, or something.
Yeah,
that movie was actually really stacked for movies that 2016. Wow, now that I'm thinking, I'm like, because I'm pretty sure Moana and Finding Dory came out that year as well.
Yep.
Yeah, wow, a lot of movies were that year.
Finding Dory was number 1. Rogue One was number 2. Captain America Civil War was number 3. So yeah,
it's kind of a surprise that Captain America was number 3, because I would have thought it would have been probably number 1 over Finding Dory and Rogue One. But Rogue One is a cinematic freaking masterpiece. I didn't really Finding Dory. It makes sense because it's Pixar, Disney. There's a ton of hype behind Finding Nemo, so that one makes sense. I don't really remember Finding Dory. I don't really think I like that movie too much.
It's not good.
It makes sense, in the terms of like being a kids movie, a lot of hype between us that were kids when it came. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's kind of obviously Deadpool is the highest. I think it's the only R-rated film that's in the top 20.
That makes sense. That would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
So totally get that. All right. And looking here though, the other question I have is R-rated films. You would already mention is that this is the highest grossing R-rated film for this weekend, this opening weekend. But where does it rank all time as far as for R-rated? Yeah.
Number 3.
Wow, dude, you nailed it.
Did I really? Oh shit! Because it made like 800 and something million total or something like that, like worldwide.
Just going off domestic, it's 363, but there's only 2 movies ahead of it, and one of them is the new one, which is the number 1, Deadpool and Wolverine. But the other one, we've talked about this before, The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, that's right. I was like, what is it? I forgot, because they actually just passed Passion of the Christ to become the biggest R-rated movie of all. He really is Marvel Jesus, man.
Marvel Jesus.
He wasn't kidding.
I forgot he said that in there. All right. Critical reception. It received a 65 on Metacritic and an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. So pretty overwhelmingly positive as far as the reviews go. One review by Christopher Orr of The Atlantic says, flamboyantly vulgar and determinedly self-referential, Deadpool has the shape of a superhero movie but the soul of a Danny McBride flick. And I was like, that is a perfect way to describe it. And I
also
can appreciate
before Danny
that.
McBride wrote the awful Halloween Kills movie.
Oh man. I will discuss this another time, but I feel like Halloween Kills is going to be one of those that, or no, not Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends. That's what I was thinking of. I feel like Halloween Ends is going to be one of those that you look back on later and you're gonna be like, you know what? They had some interesting ideas, and I'm just gonna throw that.
It was
out
a
there.
love story, man. I Halloween's upon us in a couple months, so we might have a discussion because
no, we're not doing any Halloweens this year, but we got a really stacked horror movie months coming up here. So
fair.
I digress though, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I get I think what they're going for is like more of Danny McBride's humor, obviously, and
yeah.
Of course, love McBride.
I do.
All right, cool. Awards and categories. Best scene. I got about like 5 of them. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes superhero movies, like my favorite scenes usually aren't the big action set pieces. They're more of the character stuff than anything. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's usually what I go with.
Yeah, I actually have one that you don't have on here that I think is probably my favorite sequence of the entire movie. And it's not an action sequence. It's personally my favorite is when he's locked in that oxygen reduction tube, because they want to like force the mutation. And so like, because me, like asphyxiation, man, like that gets me. I don't, something about that, like, ugh. And so when he's being like choked out for the weekend and then he gets his oxygen back to catch his breath and they choke him out again, like that was tough. But then it kind of goes into, I guess, an action scene where, he manages to headbutt Gina Carano, gets the thing and gets out and all that. You kind of see his like mutation form, but it's just basically like that, him being stuck in that tube, having his humor, but still being very much like suffocating to me, the viewer. Like that one is really freaking good.
You know what? You just made me think of something right now, is that they really missed the boat, or maybe they left this on the cutting room floor. But I mean, Ryan Reynolds did that film Buried. Do you remember that film back in the day where he's
I went in theaters and saw that movie? Yeah,
dude, same. It was I read the script before I read it, or I went and saw it too, and I was like, oh man, this is legit. And yeah, it's very uncomfortable because you're just in a box the whole time. And I'm like, they could have made a joke about it, and it's like right there for the taking because it's Deadpool and it's meta commentary, and he's already made sort of like a movie joke kind of like that too with 127 hours. He makes that joke.
Yeah.
So I'm like, did they miss that one? Did they really miss that one, or did they cut it? And maybe they cut it because, they're like, it's not a popular movie, but we're in a deep cut funny one for the people who actually went to see that movie. And like, oh,
agreed. Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That would have been a funny moment. And we're like, oh, that's funny. Like he's referencing that. That would have been a good one to do. So yeah, that's a good scene. And I did totally forget that one. I try to just narrow it down to like what my favorites are, but I love the opening credits. I think we already talked about it. So the way they have the song going, I forget what's the name of the song again. Oh, Angel of the Morning again. Yeah. So they have Angel of the Morning going, and just like all the different stuff, like the produced by a bunch of ass hats and stuff. Like
yes.
That. I love it. And it's just it's so funny. They got like the Green Lantern reference on there too and everything when they show Ryan Reynolds, Sexiest Man Alive. So I love it. I think that's,
they make 2 of those Green Lantern one. The other one's like, please don't CGI my suit.
Yeah. Well, don't they do CGI his mask though? They definitely do a little bit. So
they have to a little bit to make it perfectly. Yeah, there's no way like anybody's head shape is perfectly round like that. So they do a little, but like the Green Lantern suit was full CGI, which is
yeah, it was awful. All right, next one I have is Wade and Vanessa meet into like their date and sex montage and everything like that.
Childhood.
Rougher than yours. Daddy left before I was born.
Daddy left before I was conceived.
Ever had a cigarette put out on your skin?
Where else do you put one out?
I was molested.
Me too. Uncle.
Uncles. They took turns.
I watched my own birthday party through the keyhole of a locked closet, which also happens to be
Your
mine.
bedroom. Lucky. I slept in a dishwasher box.
You had a dishwasher. I didn't even know sleep. It was pretty much 24/7 ball gags, brownie mix, and clown porn.
Who would do such a thing?
Hopefully you.
I have so much fun, and I'm like, oh man, like this is awesome. I remember 2016 thinking like, I need to meet somebody and have it be like this. And I'm like, then again, I'm not Ryan Reynolds, and I'm not that quick to joke with somebody, so that'll never happen.
I'm quick, but it would never happen like this at all. I'm I'm not that outgoing like that.
No, I mean, neither am I. But I just love that scene, and you know,
I do
you just see their chemistry right away, and it's fun.
They had a lot of good chemistry, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And most of like the scenes, if you haven't picked up on it, are more of like the comedy character scenes, like I said. So the next scene I have is like when Deadpool reveals himself to Weasel after his his whole like botched transformation there.
Do you like what you see?
No. You look like an avocado. Had sex with an older, more disgusting avocado.
Yeah.
Not gently, like it was hate fucking. There was something wrong with the relationship, and that was the only catharsis that they could find without violence.
And the only guy who can fix this fugly mug is the British shitstick who ran the mutant factory, and he's gone. Poof.
Yeah, well, you gotta do something to remedy this, because as of now, you only have one course of action.
Damn straight. Find
Star
Francis.
in horror films.
What?
Star in your own horror films. Because you look like Freddy Krueger face fucking topographical map of Utah.
They start making fun of him, and he's like, "You just look like an older like an avocado had sex with an older, grosser avocado." So, I do like that one. I do like the Deadpool meets Blind Owl one too.
But it feels huge in these hands.
Well, and I like just like they do the fourth. He goes like, he's like, that's a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls. That's like one of my favorite quotes in the whole movie too. And the next one is like when Deadpool kills Ajax at the end there.
I do, because then Colossus throws up. He's telling him, he's like,
you were droning
3
on.
moments. Bang. He's like, oh, sorry, you're going on. He's like, throws up. And I was like, oh yeah, that was amazing, because it's like for a second, like, oh, maybe he's not going to kill him, and then he does, and it's just like, yes, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, you know, and it's one of the things where I'll get to this, but where I'd say I love it because it's a true character moment. And one of the things that maybe irked me a little bit of this is like the repetition of him saying, "I'm not a hero." It was just like, guys, I didn't need him saying it 14 times. Like, you could have said it maybe once and then, okay, I'm good. Like, I get it. But they kept repeating it. It's like, come on, guys. Like, we get the point. Like, you can trust us to like know that, yes, a hero does not just kill people at will like this guy is. So,
right.
Anyways, but yeah, that was it that I had. And then you had the other one. Was there anyone that in particular that was your favorite though? Was it the way you said?
It was the one I said, because I think
Okay.
it's a very, you know, amongst a funny movie, it's a very like serious, suffocating scene that I thought was played really well by all the actors.
Yeah, it was played well. The only thing they missed out on was that Barry joke, which, you know, we'll have to send some notes back to Ryan Reynolds. I bet he's kicking himself that he didn't.
I guarantee you he's going to send us a thank you note.
He probably will, like, damn it, you guys are right.
Are so right. Damn it.
All right, quotable line. This has so many. I tried to keep it to like 5 or 6 here. You know, I'm never gonna do Anchorman again, whether it's the whole fucking movie. All right, so I like this exchange with Colossus and Deadpool.
Let us go talk to the professor.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
He's like, you will come talk with Professor Xavier. And then Deadpool is like,
which one?
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines get so confusing.
That is a good one. Yeah. The 127 hours one is also really good. Which leads into my favorite quote that I say literally all the time, because I have big hands. So anytime I have something that's like huge, I'm like, oh, I bet it feels huge in these hands. Like, that's the one thing I quote all the time.
In the meantime, you might want to leave the room.
I bet it feels huge in this hand.
I bet it feels huge in these hands.
Or like,
That's when
I see
he's got
him
the
like
baby hands, right?
Yeah, he's because he cut his arm off. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and then he goes back and it's growing, and they like make a thing. He goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna go masturbate. I bet it feels huge in these hands."
Oh my god. I like the one where he shoves the car lighter in his mouth. He's like, I've never said this to anyone before, but don't swallow.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was a good one too. Yes.
That was a good one. The recruiter. I like this with the recruiter.
What if I told you we can cure your cancer? And what's more, give you abilities most men only dream of?
I'd say that you sound like an infomercial, but not a good one, like Slap Chop. More shake weighty.
Yeah, that one is good. Yes, yeah.
Oh, that was a good one too. Shit, I could go on, and there's probably
I
some
really
more that I'm
could,
missing.
but my favorite is definitely "I bet it feels huge in these hands."
I love that one. Mine's still a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break. That's 16 walls.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, what is the best in this movie?
Ooh, man.
I think we talked. I think we talked
did.
about it.
It was the humor, man. I think the humor and like getting off the ground for Marvel R-rated films, or like like superhero films willing to take the risk. I think that has something that's aged really well.
Yeah, and that's important because when you think back to when Blade came out, that was like the late 90s. Different time to be making movies. Like comic book superhero movies aren't what they were today. Like
No, not at all.
We didn't get that until until Spider-Man, I'd say, is like really when comic book movies started to become more of like a big part of pop culture. And obviously when I'm saying Spider-Man, I'm talking Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah.
So like that's really when it first started. That broke records as far as the biggest opening weekend, I think, in box office history. So that's like sort of where it comes. Blade was before that, and it was just a different time and it had a different feel to it. That did not feel like a comic book movie. That felt like almost pre-Matrixy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was just it was different. It did not have that sort of aesthetic or feel to it. It just felt like an action movie. So I would say that the R-rated Marvel movies have definitely aged well. They've been some of the best Marvel movies that we've had so far. So I love it. And I'd say that's what's aged the best is just the R-rated Marvel movies. We haven't been oversaturated with them. And when they've picked their spots, they've done them well. So, yeah. I'd say we've got two for what aged the worst.
TJ Miller and Gina Carano.
Yep. There we go. Pick your
I think Gina Carano's a little worse because she's still out here like trying to get like Pedro Pascal to have her back and stuff like that. And she's still going on about trying to sue Disney. So in my opinion, I think she has aged worse because now you don't even hear about TJ Miller anymore since his little bomb threat incident. But I also think he had like a tumor on his brain. So I'll give him a little leeway, but Gina Carano has no excuses. She is absolutely aged the worst in anything she's in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's my ultimate choice. All right. We already talked about it. Rick and Morty, International Cable Box. What version of this movie would you like to see? I want to see the one directed by Robert Rodriguez. I think that would be a fucking blast. I love Robert Rodriguez. I loved him ever since I saw From Dusk Till Dawn, which is like a great movie with a great twist. We'll definitely do that at some point. I think, Matt, that's a fun one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I just think like he would be a good director for this type of character. He just gets how to do action and violence and mix the two with humor together. So I think that's what I would go with as far as this.
Yeah, I'd go with that too. That's fair because I love Rodriguez so much. He does action sequences really well. And there's something like just very poetic about the way he films his action. So I'd be down for that. Totally.
And, he's got experience in the comic book genre. Yeah. Obviously, we think of Sin City, which I fucking love.
Good movie. Good movie.
Another R-rated superhero, or not a superhero, but comic.
It's a comic graphic novel. Yeah.
Yeah. So, another good one by that. Anyways. All right. I mean, do we really have to dive much into standout performance? We've already
we don't
We've
have to go.
already-
Oscar and standout performance are going to be Ryan Reynolds, because something I really appreciate about what Ryan Reynolds does with Deadpool is studios, when they have big name actors, are so hell bent in having them have the mask off in superhero movies. And that's why they're always taking it on, taking off. But something Deadpool really does, and I always allude, like Batman with Robert Pattinson did this too. The studios are now, I think maybe because of this movie, are leaving their masks on their heroes more. They're realizing you don't have to take your mask off. People are still going to watch it. People are still going to love it. Yeah, you paid a lot, but like Ryan Reynolds, the way he's able to deliver a performance and emotion without seeing his face, man, of course he's a standout performance. And honestly, he gets my Oscar as well for that reason right there. Like, acting behind a mask is not easy. And he really does. Like, it's more than the humor. It's those emotional moments with Vanessa and things that he really does beneath the surface. And so for me, that's mine right there.
Yeah, and it's also, like, look, I mean, we've already sucked Ryan Reynolds' dick enough on this podcast, so we'll continue to do so. I mean, I will say, he is, you ask most guys who their male crush is, I bet you 4 out of 10 of them are going to say Ryan Reynolds. So most straight guys, that is.
Yeah.
So, speaking for straight guys out here, I bet they will. Anyways, for standout performance, I think that's a good point. I didn't even think about the acting behind the mask. Like, he totally is. And even if he's not, he's delivering the lines perfectly. If he's doing them, he's probably doing them at ADR or something like that. So I think we talked about it before, though. It's more of just how he embodies the character. It is him. Like, I feel like he is Deadpool. Deadpool is Ryan Reynolds. Like, it's 100%. I can't separate the two. And I agree. If we're going to go for who gets an Oscar, the only other case I could make would be for Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick for the writing, because they wrote so much of like the humor in this character and everything. I think they have a case, but again, some of my criticisms come from that too, because I don't like how many times they say, oh, I'm not a hero. It's like, okay, guys, like, it's a little superfluous how many times he's got to say it,
Not for nothing either, but I don't think this humor necessarily works with any other actor either. You got to think of like who's saying it. Like, it's all about delivery. Like, so much of comedy is about the delivery and the way it's said. Like, you use your body as comedy. You use your, emoting as comedy. And I think that if you put another actor, I don't really know who else could have hit the marks like Ryan Reynolds does. Cause he is Deadpool. He is Wade Wilson. And so I think if you put anybody else in this scenario with the same script, I don't think it's as good of a script without Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. All right. For pound though, do we have any, I got 2. All right. And tell me if you got any more. I love Leslie Uggams as Blind Al, though.
I love Blind Al so much. She is such a badass.
I love her. And then Karan Soni, I think that's how it's pronounced, as Dopinder. I love him as well. Like, those are my 2 favorite like characters who aren't in the film a lot, and who I think just with the minimal screen time they have, they fucking deliver. So
honestly, like, the only ones I could also make a case for would be Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Like, those 2, they don't show up a lot, but when they do, like, Colossus plays into Wade Wilson really well. And then, Brianna is just very angsty teenager, and something like Deadpool is inherently really good at connecting with kids and taking care of kids in comic books. Like, that's his soft spot. And so it's like, it's kind of cool getting to see him be that older guy to like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, as this teenage girl, like, I thought they played really well together. So I think she could even arguably, but I think overall my favorite would probably be Blind Al. Yeah.
I do like Blind Al. I love when when he sees her at one point, not Blind Al, but when he sees Negasonic and he says, he makes the Sinead O'Connor reference. R.I.P. I think she passed away. It was
like it was a couple years ago now, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But anyways, I think so. I was excited to see Colossus in this film because as somebody who grew up on the 90s TV animated series for X-Men, like, Colossus was one of my favorite characters in that. So and it was good to see him in a live action. And have
it was vastly different than the Colossus we briefly got in X-Men movies. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I did enjoy him in this. And yeah, even if he is a CGI character. So, all right. Music moment. There's a few in this. They've got some good music moments in this. Angel of the Morning. I've said it 5 times already, I swear. Is the opening credits is fucking amazing. So then you go into Salt and Pepper. Shoot.
Yeah.
I love Shoot. That takes me back to a time and a place in the 90s where my mom had a big conversion van and we would actually play the Salt and Pepper tape deck all the time, cruising around in that thing. And I may or may not have a playlist on Spotify called Dora's Van Jams, and that is definitely one of the songs on there. It's basically just like all the 90s rap and R&B songs that we were listening to at the time.
Yeah.
So Shoop is definitely on there, and I love that. It's a good music moment too in the film. So
Hard
all right, other ones on here. X gonna give it to you.
I love DMX. So this was one of my favorites.
You know what I liked too that I caught this time, and it probably is intentional, but at the end of that, you've got Ajax who keeps saying "What's my name" to Deadpool.
Yeah,
and he says it at the end of it, but that's also in DMX song too. Is "What's my name."
That's right. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I think they purposely threw that in there. It's like it's a good moment to have that song and then have another reference to DMX. It's almost like another reference to that, but it's not the character of Deadpool making the reference. So I thought that was funny. You're the Inspiration is another good one. When he's stabbed in the head and it's like playing slow.
Yeah, and it's got like he's seeing like all the flowers and whatnot. Yeah, that's a good one.
I think this one is the ultimate winner though, is Careless Whisper.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about this one. That's a good one. That's right.
Wow.
That's fair. I will give it to Careless Whisper as well. It's hard to beat that one.
Yeah, it really is. All right. I'm going with Careless Whisper. You going with that too?
Yeah, I'll go with Careless Whisper as well.
Okay. What are we double featuring this with? I'm going to go Zag on this one and not go Deadpool 2, which is the obvious choice. I am going with Scream.
Okay.
I'm going with the early meta iteration of something that's being self-referential while also being a part of the genre. And not as much humor, a little bit. I mean, Scream's funny. It's like a dark humor though, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think I'm just sort of staying in the meta track. Like if you want to have like a meta off and look at what 90s meta is as opposed to what sort of modern meta has become within like the comic book superhero genre, I think Scream is a perfect double feature.
I am going to say, I'm also going to go off a little bit because I was going to say Blade.
Good one, dude. Staying with the horror kind of.
Yeah, it's like Marvel or Deadpool did something for like the genre, pushing it forward into like R-rated territory where Blade kind of saved the MCU, and it's got some humor that's kind of similar in some regards. Like Wesley Snipes is pretty funny as Blade in sometimes, and it's bloody and action packed, and so I think Blade's a good double feature for me on this end. Yeah,
that's a good one. Another. It's almost like like you said, like what were R-rated superhero movies to what they would become, and now this is sort of that's it. Like you've got only one other movie that's in there, and it's not a Marvel one. It's obviously a excuse me. It's other than the Blade sequels, obviously, but it's a you've got Watchmen, and that's it. So and that's it. All right, who wins the day?
Dude, there's only one answer. You cannot sit here and look me in the face and say it's anybody other than Ryan freaking Reynolds. Come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's Ryan Reynolds, and it was Fox at the time, and now it's Disney. Disney wins the day now. That's true. They got to they get to be like, hey, we just bought it. We didn't produce it. And they're like, all right, now we did. But
yeah.
It's all Disney now. No, it's Ryan Reynolds. It's 100% Ryan Reynolds. You know what? And that's it. I mean, that's who's gonna win the day on this one. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
mean, it's easy. It's easy.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you,
All right.
thank you.
Letterbox score.
Oh, I know what mine is. I'm gonna go ahead and say it right off the bat.
Do
It's,
it, yeah.
Dude, it's 4.5. I think that it's a really great film. I think there's just a little bit there's just something that keeps it from being a full on 5 for me, but that doesn't mean like it's come on, it's fucking 4.5. Easy enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit lower and do a 4, but it's
Okay. That's fair.
You know, for the same reasons that we talked about. I think there's some things in here that do keep it from being like a 5. Like if, you know, it's not the best of all the superhero films. Like I those are reserved. I think 5's got to be reserved for like the best of the best, but it's great. It's a fun time. It is something that's different, a little bit of a breath of fresh air. It's not the norm like you typically see.
Yeah.
So for that, I still have to say it's a 4 for me, and it's a solid 4. And so with that, we'll get 4.25. And so look, we'll round up and call that, since it's at 0.25, we'll call that a 4.5 for our letterbox score for Deadpool. So yeah, that's it.
We did it.
We did it. All right, Matt. Time for the spoiler-free review Deadpool and Wolverine. What do we got?
In my opinion, spoiler free, this is a top 5, if not top 3 MCU film of all time for me. I thought it was absolutely incredible. The soundtrack is like my favorite. The soundtrack went so crazy. The surprise appearances from, some of the characters made sense. You know, it wasn't gratuitous. It was gratuitous, but it also like moved things. They were very important to the plot. Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine was super emotional. He was very like raw and angry. Compare that to Ryan Reynolds, who just is Deadpool, and the humor there, it hit for me. The jokes were amazing. Overall, like it's one of my favorite Marvel films of all time.
It was great. I had such a fun time seeing this in theaters. Like many of the things that you said are true. I wouldn't say it's top. It might be actually, if I were to do a list and list everyone out. It's up there. It was really good. It's my favorite of the Deadpool movies for sure. So I think it's gotten progressively better. I had so much fun with this one. And I like how they tied everything in from, going over from Fox, from that universe into the MCU. It's incorporating Deadpool and Wolverine and X-Men into the MCU is something that's been discussed now that Disney owns the properties. It's been something that's been kind of in the works now. So to see that actually come to fruition a little bit too, and have Deadpool be one of like the main characters to do that makes sense for who the character is and the story. Yeah. So I like how they did that. I love the cameos in it. The soundtrack does I love the soundtrack.
Goes so hard.
It does. But yeah, so for that, I do love this film. Highly recommend it. Go see it in theaters. It's a great theater experience for this film because, you're going to see it with people that love and appreciate this movie. Comedy is one of those things where it just is so much better in a theater. I mean, it's just so much better in general with other people because you're laughing together. So like the communal experience of the theater, essentially, like we've said before, go to the fucking movies.
Go to the fucking movies, man. This movie is worth seeing in theaters. I promise.
Go to the fucking movies. All right. That does it for our episode here, though, at the Real Buffs for Deadpool. Next week. Oh, little caveat here. For weeks now, I've been promising Forrest Gump. I think for 2 weeks, I promised Forrest Gump. I just got to say, we are doing Forrest Gump. It is not going to be the next episode. We had a little bit of a pivot in schedule. And so it is not going to be
on their toes. All right.
Yeah, I know. I got to keep you guys on your toes. So Forrest Gump is not going to be the next episode. It will be the episode after the next one, though. Next week, it's not as lighthearted as a movie as this one was, and it is definitely R-rated, and it's a Fox vehicle, too. I will say that. So stay tuned for the preview on that. But on behalf of the Real Buffs, I am the Real Buffs. I guess that one beer really did get me drunk. I don't know. But yeah, on behalf of the Real Buffs, I'm your host, Charlie.
I'm Matt.
And so long, and let's hit the trailer.
As y'all know, my wife, Amy Elliott Dunn, disappeared 3 days ago.
She may be the face I can't forget, a trace of pleasure or regret, may be my treasure or the price I have to pay. She may be the song that summer sings, may be the chill that autumn brings, may be 100 different things within a measure of a day.
You can't go on like this.
It's not good enough for you?
It's not even close.
She may be the reason I survive, the why and wherefore I'm alive, the one I'll care for through the rough and rainy years. Me, I'll take her laughter and her tears and make them all my souvenirs. Where she goes, I've got to be. The meaning of my life is she.
Stay back, everybody, stay back.
I did not kill my wife. I am not a murderer.
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for Deadpool 2. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? Sam Jackson show up with an eye patch and a saucy little leather number? Go.